and welcome to the first proper episode of Subjectively Correct, the podcast where two film-loving pals show each other movies according to randomized themes to compare and discuss expectations, experiences, and taste. My name is Matt, and I'm with my co-host Josh.
Hello, everybody.
At the end of the pilot episode, episode 0, we spun our funny little wheel of random themes and genres to pick our subject for today's episode. Fate decided that episode number 1 will be dedicated to the genre of history, so we shall have some quirky and lighthearted and not at all heavy conversations about major historic events as we discuss two movies depicting or interpreting some historical subject matter.
Yes.
It's actually a bit funny that we pulled this theme for the first proper randomized episode. I mean, since historical films obviously tend to depict pretty serious subject matter and aren't even necessarily made first and foremost for entertainment, this isn't, the lightest theme to ease in with our new podcast project.
Especially with the films that we ended up choosing, which are not the lightest of tales, I would say.
Yeah, that's very true. I actually had a hard time choosing my film because I didn't feel like we wanted pure misery in this episode. But I think we got pretty decent variety.
Yeah, and something like historical is so broad that it could include so many different things. And, what do you include? There's just any old period piece that's set in the past or important events, war movies, documentaries, just anything that's kind of historical and worth telling, I guess. And
yeah, I was actually wondering about the definition too. Like, does it have to be an actually historical significant event, or is it just anything that's culturally relevant? It's very blurry lines for sure.
Or is it something that's perhaps historically relevant in the world of cinema? So
right,
maybe it's an old sci-fi film could fit history, I think.
Yeah. The art piece itself, the movie itself being historic. Yeah, true.
Yeah. So this might be something that we could explore some more in the future if we ever feel saucy enough.
Sure, if we feel brave enough to talk about these themes again. But for now, you chose the 1998 movie The Thin Red Line, directed by Terrence Malick. Mm-hmm. Would you like to start?
Sure. So, yes, I ended up falling onto a war film not because it's a war film, but when I think of history, a lot of my favorite kind of quote-unquote period pieces kind of end up being war films, partly because I feel like while they are significant events in history, they also have they're a great, way to then talk about humanity in general and kind of throw up the mirror to what makes us do the things we do and make the decisions we make and all that kind of thing. And, that leads me very neatly into The Thin Red Line, which is, yes, a 1998 war film directed by Terrence Malick. It stars a whole lot of people. The cast list for this movie is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Pretty much everyone in it is a name that you recognize or a face you recognize. So can't really go through everyone, but for a few highlights, there's Sean Penn, Jim Caviezel, Adrian Bodie, Ben Chaplin, Alias Cotius, John Cusack, Woody Harrelson, Nick Nolte, John C. Reilly, Dash Mino, Kirk Acevedo, Nick Stahl, Tim Blake Nelson, so on and so forth. A few others that show up here and there. A few people whose names I don't necessarily know, but I've seen them in TV shows and that sort of thing. But there's like pretty much everyone you see in the movie is, I've seen that guy before.
Yeah.
Or I've seen that girl before. And yeah. It's also written by Terrence Malick. The movie is anyway, but it's based on a novel by James Jones and is essentially my 2-bit summary is that it follows a company called Charlie Company of soldiers in World War II in the Pacific and their particular operation of trying to take some land on a particular island, which part of the reason it doesn't matter is because it's kind of an insignificant bit of land and an insignificant operation, but it's what they have to do, and it's obviously very dangerous, and it's less about the fact that that's what they're doing and more about the fact that they're doing it as human beings who have different needs and wants and philosophies and desires and all that kind of thing. And it's very much attempting to be a kind of portrait, an existential kind of portrait of what these soldiers are going through during the war. And often throughout the film, you hear voiceover narration, which is what they're thinking at the time. And you follow them through different parts and different acts of the story, I guess, where they're taking this bit of land, and you develop with them through this particular operation and everything they have to come up against as soldiers. And I don't want to say too much more before hearing from Matt and what he thought, but that's the basic plot, I guess, if you want to call it that. I know it's not like this happens, then that happens, because to me, that's not really the importance of this film. It's more about people experiencing an extreme part of life, i.e. warfare and killing and all that kind of thing, and how they approach it and deal with it against the backdrop of nature itself that is kind of its own character in the film, I'd say, and has a very kind of stoic presence throughout from start to finish. But yeah, I'll get into it more in a bit because there's a few characters and things that I'd like to talk about. But Matt, what did you reckon? You hadn't seen this before.
Yeah, very true.
Tell me all about it. Lay it on me.
Yeah, so very true. I haven't seen this before. I went into this very much blindly as well. I didn't really know anything about this movie. And there were actually a couple surprises that I found when I later read about this movie a bit. But it's actually interesting to me that the way you describe this movie, as it doesn't really matter what the hell's actually going on, why they are on this island in this part of the war. Because I personally often struggle with keeping up with war stories because there's just so much going on, and they are always just like this little snippet of a bigger picture that's often, for me, too complicated to grasp, I guess. So it's actually interesting to take it as, yeah, it doesn't matter where exactly they are. It's just they are in this hell, and this is just their experience. And yeah, I'm also not usually a person that cares for war movies. It's probably one of my least favorite genres. And I think, yeah, you mentioned the importance or the significance of nature in this movie as well. This was actually the first thing that really struck me watching this, because I've seen a couple of other Terrence Malick movies as well, and he always seems to be very much into the naturalist visuals, and he also seems to have like really passionate like depictions of indigenous people, which I always love in his movies. And there's a bit of that in here as well. And I believe, for me, if it wasn't for this incredibly engaging visual presentation with all this truly, with the green environment really being front and center until it's destroyed, I guess, that I think actually that made the movie more memorable to me than anything else. I don't know if for me the story otherwise would be as engaging and effective. Although, to be fair, there are very good performances in here, for sure. It's just definitely, I think, the last episode we had a bit of a thing where we just both like the movies. But I think here, this is one of the examples where it's just a cup of tea thing, a subjective taste thing, where it's just not necessarily my kind of thing. But I can still appreciate parts of it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think the story is very much involved with the environment. It's very much like looking at, I take it as looking at humans doing what humans do, but by fighting each other and killing and doing these horrible things that happen in war. But then the environment is ever present in which that's happening. And there's so many beautiful, I think it's beautifully shot, the film, where there'll just be a moment of silence on like the hillside, and it'll just be a shot of all the long grass kind of blowing in the wind and that sort of thing, that kind of reminds you that actually that's always there and it doesn't really care either. Like,
yeah, I love that.
It's like a passive observer of everything that's happening, but not really affected by it.
Yeah.
Like, I like that it didn't go the route of saying like, oh, now look at it all destroyed. Isn't that sad? Like, it just kind of was always there.
True. Though they do destroy a lot of it. I always wonder watching some of these old war movies where they really blow the landscape to pieces. And this one is one of them. Like, it always feels like this is the kind of movie that you probably couldn't really make these days because there's a bigger concern for environmental, yeah, and it's amazing. It's really, it's kind of difficult because I hate to see these beautiful lush forest literally being blown to bits with fiery explosions, but it like just in the context of the movie, it does make for incredibly effective visuals. And I guess thankfully it's not wasted since Malik actually knows how to capture it. There's some incredible like camera swoops over like these war-torn environments and really capturing with a lot of movement and everything. Like, at least the destruction serves a purpose in an artistic sense. It's interesting theme for me too, an interesting thing to me in cinema production.
Well, I think as well, it's as you kind of touched on too, like it's in this one, it's relevant for the story to not necessarily destroy the environment, but as that's kind of part of the point as well, is that the environment's involved, so to speak. Like, it's not just we shot a movie here and we messed everything up. It's more, this is kind of part of the story they're telling by having it in this environment, which is so, I think, in your face. Because being that kind of Pacific Island tropical environment, I think it's like, not only is it very beautiful, but it's also easy to kind of take that kind of strange place as it was anyway, that's a little bit unfamiliar to probably most people, and, put it forefront in every shot kind of thing.
Yeah. It's an untouched ground by humanity, like for the most part. And then human conflicts take it into their little turmoil and reshape it. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of ties it, for me anyway, it ties it into probably the other side of the storytelling, which is the very philosophical and kind of ethereal look at humans and what they go through in these sorts of extreme circumstances. And I think it touches a lot on like different personal beliefs and all that kind of thing, because there's a lot of talk about gods and religion and that kind of thing, as well as different characterizations of kind of archetypes that exist in those scenarios. Like, one of my favorite characters in the whole movie is Nick Nolte's character.
Yeah, okay.
Who he plays like an older, I can't remember his actual rank, but he's like a lieutenant or something, or a sergeant, or he's in command of the troops who are pushing on this island. But you get given not his whole backstory to make it too boring, I think, but you get his whole perspective of this soldier who's worked his whole life and never really achieved anything, and never really been able to show that he's worth giving a damn about. And now he's old, and this is probably the last chance he'll get to kind of, quote unquote, like do something impressive with his career in the army. So he has this kind of dogged and obsessed way of going about everything and trying to take this hill no matter what the cost, even if people are dying and even if it's a bad idea. And I think Nick Nolte does an amazing performance.
Yeah, it's actually, if I could just dig in there, because I was actually going to mention Nick Nolte as well, his character. In my notes, I wrote Nick Nolte's performance pretty stereotypical angry army man, a bit laughable. Yeah. Because that's where he starts. And I thought this was a bit of an annoying character at first, but it has a point because, as you said, the character development is there. He is purposefully this overeager, way too patriotic little army man who just doesn't have the actual battlefield experience, really. That's how I got it, at least. That's why he was so eager to actually get a success in by any means possible, and not really caring that much about the soldiers that he is commanding. And it was like, while it was the first impression that kind of made me groan, because this angry, eccentric army stereotype is kind of one of the things that I dislike about war movies often. It has a development that pays off, because it actually turns into something more nuanced later on, where he is challenged more and more, and it turns into a more interesting character. Yeah, Nick Nolte was good in this. I agree.
I do agree his character is not like likable at all.
Oh yeah, for sure.
like what a dick.
Yeah.
But I really like how they embodied his obsession and need to kind of gain something, and his desperation to kind of achieve his goals and actually prove himself as useful and worthy of his command, kind of thing. And the other couple of characters who stood out for me, I think, are the character of Whit, who's the very first guy you meet, who's Jim Caviezel. He kind of has this, he's gone AWOL at the beginning of the film, and like you said, there's some indigenous characters in here and stuff who he's kind of hanging out with a tribe or a group of indigenous characters on some Pacific island, and just kind of observing them living their life, and philosophizing about death itself and what that means to him, and why people are killing each other and all this kind of stuff. And he has this almost like Zen Buddhist kind of character throughout, where he reaches some kind of state of almost enlightenment or nirvana and doesn't really get fazed by anything. Like, he still gets scared and everything, but he starts meeting all the violence with like a calm, kind of almost a bit of a smirk on his face kind of thing. And there's a moment where he's talking to Sean Penn's character later on in the film, and Sean Penn's character is kind of more of a nihilist kind of archetype, where he's over it, he's had enough, he hates everything, but he's just doing it because he has to. And he's kind of gone a bit numb to all the violence and to all the horrors and all that kind of thing. And he's talking to the other character, Whit, about, how the hell can you even smile in this kind of environment? Or how can you even like bring your emotions together to function, basically, and not just shut down and go, who gives a fuck? And I find those two characters I found really fascinating, and kind of embodying what they were trying to do with the film anyway, where they're not necessarily, to me, representing individual soldiers. They're more just aspects of humanity that are trying to cope with these extreme circumstances that they've created for themselves in that way. Yeah. And yeah, that kind of stuff to me is what made the film really special. But I get the feeling it didn't really land as hard for you.
Well, I do want to say though, you talked about like Sean Penn's character being more nihilistic or growing numb. I think actually them growing numb to like as a whole is one of the more striking things to me as anyway. I think the most miserable scene in this whole thing is, I guess maybe spoiler alert or whatever, but who cares? I think the most miserable scene by far in this whole thing was when they actually win and capture the hill, and then just stroll in between the defeated Japanese army men. And it's just so incredibly grim and dire, and the American soldiers are just mostly just numb and disregards, like most, not all of them, but like a lot of them disregard like the experience of the Japanese soldiers. And I actually love that this movie isn't really showing it as a success, as a patriotic USA success or whatever, but like the Japanese men, they were just as much fighting for their country's cause as the Americans. There's not really a difference, except like I guess the motive, but the I guess the passion is the same. And it's so interesting to see them both clash after the fighting is done, I guess. that was genuinely, for me, emotionally effective, that whole sequence. That was pretty powerful, I think.
Yeah, I really like how it doesn't necessarily take sides.
Yeah.
Like you're obviously seeing it from the American side, but there's a good effort, I think, made to show that the quote unquote enemy, like the Japanese soldiers, are just as distraught or just as desperate or just as, wondering what the hell they're doing there, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And once they get caught and they're, it's horrible, but they're begging for their lives and, just trying to themselves kind of find some semblance of sanity in the whole mix of it all. And yeah, I like how the film never tried to portray either side as like quote the bad guys or the good guys.
Yeah.
And it was just like, yes, they're fighting each other, and from each other's perspective, it's not even, most of the time it's not even like screw them, they're the enemy. It's like we have to defeat them because that's what we have to do.
Yeah, we're told this. We're put here from others.
Yeah, there's a weird disconnect from the actual, I think, kind of grander view of the war kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like we're just people on this island trying to do what we're told to do, as weird and horrible as it is.
Yeah. And I guess in that sense it makes, like, this movie apparently is very much praised as being a very realistic depiction of war. I can totally see that. I liked that you don't even see, I think you don't even see a Japanese soldier until like halfway through or something. Even though there's conflict, there's already bullets flying and whatever, but that doesn't mean that you see your enemy. That only happens later. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that kind of monster in the hill thing, which you don't know about, But one tiny bit that always stands out for me with this film whenever I think about it is just a simple line, which I can't remember the actor's name, but he's one of the, grunt soldiers. And I've definitely seen him before. Can't find him right now. But they've done all this prep work and they're kind of, making their way up the hill and everything and doing their army stuff. But it's the point where they actually kind of start to make contact and there's actual conflict, like person to person. And he shoots someone and you hear in his head, he goes something like, "Oh my God, I just killed someone." And no one can do anything about it. Like, I'm allowed to, it's okay, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that always strikes me as like really just getting to the heart of it, because that's fucked up. But that's kind of what's going on. Like, these dudes who are just normal guys back home, are now actually killing people. And the thing I hate about war movies is all the gratuitous killing, which then gets kind of written off as part of what you're doing. But it's nice for me anyway, I like how a character's kind of like, I actually just killed someone. Like, this is not something I experience in my life, and this is weird. And it's actually kind of horrible that I have, but I'm allowed to because I'm here in a war, kind of thing.
Yeah, really acknowledging the context that this is a place where killing is normal and expected.
And how kind of unnatural that is as well.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's the kind of stuff I really liked about this movie, and why I think it stood out is because it doesn't glorify anything about it.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
But if you if you're going to rate it and give your kind of 2 cents as a summary, how would you sum it up?
Yeah, my ultimate rating at the end was a 7 out of 10. So it wasn't like the most amazing movie for me, but I still appreciate a bunch of it. Again, this is definitely one of those cases where it's just, the genre is just not my cup of tea, I guess, or the subject. But
that's valid, though.
Yeah, like I said earlier, it's honestly mostly Terrence Malick's direction and the way he captures the environment as well, which elevated this for me as a war movie that I would remember more than others. I think that was my favorite part, even though there were, like I said before, there were definitely very good performances, but it is the presentation that really made it something more special for me, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And part of why I wanted to see what you thought as well, because I think there is that kind of balance between a very well-made film cinematically, along with obviously what I think is a interesting take on a war kind of story. But yeah.
One last thing, I guess. I only afterwards, after watching the movie, I found out that this was actually based on, because it's based on the book by James Jones, and apparently his writing is based on some of his own actual experiences during the war, which, yeah, I didn't know that before, and I think that puts it in a bit more different context as well. I was a bit surprised, I guess. I don't know why, but I guess I was a bit surprised to read that afterwards.
Well, I think even the whole battle is based on an actual battle that happened.
Yeah.
The Battle of Guadalcanal.
Yes.
If anyone knows what that means.
I read up about that a bit, actually. Like, island in the northeast of Australia, and Japanese were taking over these little islands for some defense lines. And apparently they were also attempting to build an airport on the island, if I got that correct. And that was probably like the one reason why Americans desperately tried to capture this place.
Yeah.
At least that's what maybe I'm completely wrong, but that's how I got it. But yeah.
No, I think that's pretty much it. I think even in the film, part of what they're heading towards is like an airport or an airstrip or something.
I thought there was something like that, yeah.
They've discovered, yeah. But no, cool. I have to say, again, slight spoiler, but
yeah,
very much at the end, George Clooney shows up for like 2 seconds,
right,
and plays a character who I think is everything wrong with war movies. But I kind of feel like that's the point of his character being in there anyway, because after they've gone through all this crap and everything, they're kind of returning to camp, and they do that thing which a lot of films do. Like, it shows up in a lot of war films where, you know, the fresh-faced new recruits come into contact with the dudes who've been out there fighting for their lives for the last week or whatever, and they kind of cross paths. And all the fresh people are like, yeah, we're going to go out and kick some ass. And the other guy's like, this is fucked. Don't do it.
Yeah.
And George Clooney's character is like the new I'm in charge, fast-talking American sergeant kind of dude. And you just kind of roll your eyes and go, oh, goodness me.
And so it goes again.
Yeah. But that's the thin red line, I think.
Yeah, it sure is.
While I obviously enjoyed it a lot more than I think you did, I can definitely see where you're coming from. And yeah, at the end of the day, it is a war film. So if that doesn't help you either, that's, you know, it's never going to. But definitely, I think I'd still rate it as perhaps my favorite, if not one of the best war films that I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, even for my experience, like, this is one of the better war movies I've seen. One of the more interesting ones for me. So even that, I can say. Yeah.
And I do like a war movie that makes it look like shit.
Sure.
And doesn't kind of, you know, do the whole high five and aren't we great thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, from one extreme to another, why don't you introduce us to the film you brought this month?
Yeah. So I decided to bring to this episode the 2017 movie Loving Vincent, directed by D.K. Welchman and Hugh Welchman, starring a bunch of people, including Douglas Booth, Robert Gulaschik, Eleanor Tomlinson, Helen McCrory, Saoirse Ronan, and Chris O'Dowd, and a whole bunch of other people. Written by the directors D.K. Welchman and Hugh Welchman, as well as Jacek von Dene. I think that's a Dutch writer. Don't quote me on that, though. And Loving Vincent is a lively homage to Van Gogh's paintings and his life in general. The plot centers around Armand Rulin, the son of a postman who is tasked by his father to deliver the final letter that Van Gogh wrote before his suicide. And while Armand Rulin tries to find an appropriate recipient for the letter, he learns more and more about Van Gogh's life and his final days before his death. I think the most, well, probably definitely the most defining or prominent feature about this movie is that this is a film where every single frame, apparently 65,000 frames, every single one of them being an actual real oil painting that was hand painted, which is why it took 6 years to make. I still remember when this was actually in production, and it was a big deal, at least for me when it came out. And I think with the time, I only learned to appreciate it more. This is a movie that not necessarily tells a factually correct version of Van Gogh's life. I'm actually not sure how much of this is actually factually correct, but it is not only a fascinating revival, bringing to life of his paintings, since pretty much every character in this is based on a person that he painted, and also the locations are places that he painted. They emulate his style and bring animation to it and put it in a story about Van Gogh himself. And they use this style, this production, to tell a story about basically depression, about mental health and being an outsider, and what can lead someone to an untimely death in that sense. This one being Van Gogh's suicide, who was believed to have shot himself. I mean, he definitely died of a bullet. It's just unclear what the circumstances are from what I gathered, but it is believed that he shot himself. And the real life character, he did have mental things going on. He was in therapy as well. So this isn't just grasping this from thin air, and it's putting this in this really, like, truly artistic, in more than one sense, way to depict this. And I think it's a genuinely beautiful and unique cinematic creation. I would really like to hear your thoughts on this, though.
Cool. No, that sounds ominous. I very much enjoyed this. I did. I have to say,
Good.
I watched it just before we started recording. But I do also have a couple of issues with it. So
fair, yeah. Me too.
You know, I do think there's a big difference between the presentation of this film and then the story itself, and the characters and the acting and the writing and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where if you just talk about how this is presented with the animation style and all that, it's fantastic. 100%. Start to finish, it looks amazing. Hey everyone, editing Josh here. I just wanted to butt in before I get carried away in the original recording and make a fool of myself, because I say a couple of times throughout our discussion on Loving Vincent that Vincent van Gogh was an impressionist artist. This isn't strictly true. I know he's actually mostly known for German expressionism, which is a different school of thought and not quite the same thing. However, hopefully you can forgive me, and it's been a while since I did my art history, so bear with me. Whenever I say impressionism, please think in your head, actually, he means expressionism instead. And it's just that little bit of a distinction that I wanted to highlight here. So let's get back to it. I love that it follows Van Gogh's like impressionist style, and it sticks to obviously trying to emulate known paintings that he's done and that sort of thing. And like you say, there's certain scenes which are just taken straight from paintings that he's done, where you can kind of recognize it as you're watching the film, like, oh yeah, I know what that looks like. That's that painting. But then adding movement to it and adding some sort of dynamics and that kind of thing actually helps bring it to life. And, you know, obviously then there's some interpretations on animating those characters into a story. But I definitely really enjoyed the animation. However, I do kind of, and this is just a little thing, I do kind of get annoyed when something is billed as, 100% hand painted frames of a film, when I actually watched a very short little making of as well, just to see what the paintings were about and all that kind of thing, like how it was put together. Because to me, it looked like kind of a Van Gogh style of rotoscoped animation, like I've seen in other movies like Scanner Darkly or Waking Life, or those sorts of films, which I love as well. I love the animation style. And it kind of is and kind of isn't. Because there's some 3D animation aspects of it where the textures have been made with actual paintings, but it's been animated in a computer. And there's aspects where they filmed the whole thing with real actors and stuff, which is fine, and then kind of painted over the top. So all of that is good. I just don't, in my view, it's not 100% hand-painted film kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because there is all that other stuff involved.
If I could just add to that, like I didn't see a making of or something, but even I noticed a couple of moments where different scenes where what's the word? There was some chroma keying going on to layer different scenes onto each other, which was obvious and is obviously not actually one frame painted. So I'm not surprised to hear that there's some trickery going on. I still think what is there in terms of actual painting is still impressive enough, though.
Yeah. And that would be my next breath as well, is that that's okay, because it's still pretty freaking amazing. I just always have, it's kind of like, to kind of put it in a different context, I like seeing what artists do on Etsy and that kind of thing, and I like supporting artists that way and buying stuff. And it kind of annoys me when they say this is hand painted, but it's a copy of something that's hand painted rather than that actual item being hand painted, if you know what I mean. And this kind of brought out that little bit of tiny little bit of frustration where it's like, you're saying this is all hand painted, but it's not. There are cracks in that. And I get it, because it's fine. It's how you make a whole movie in a very hand painted style. With, I think they, in the credits, they say something like there's 100 painters working on it.
125, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, that's impressive. And it does look amazing. And I think it's brilliant. And I love the way they did it. I just wish they'd said it's, not necessarily they're not just taking photos of paintings to make up the frames of the film kind of thing. And understandably too.
I think it's still, like, obviously that's not 100% of it, but I think it's still largely that, isn't it? I mean, I can't prove it, but I have the sense that it's still at least more than 50% that's actually paintings photographed.
Well, what you're seeing is like painted, but it's then the worst. Well, the biggest part is there's like some wide shots of the towns and that kind of thing, and when the train's moving by, and you can see in the making of, they show it as the animation that it is from a 3D animation, with essentially real paintings then shoved on top as the textures and all that kind of thing. So that's all cool because it looks great.
Yeah, it does.
And I don't want to get hung up on this little point either, because it's just one little thing. Because, at the end of the day, it does look amazing. And one of the things I really liked about the style of animation, and it's very much a rotoscopy kind of thing, where anything in movement is kind of constantly in movement, because the texture and everything is constantly changing with every single frame. So if there's a character who's talking and moving, their whole body and clothing and everything is kind of moving with every single frame. And because it is a different, brush strokes and everything between each frame, but the background will be completely static. Yeah. And then when that character kind of stops moving, they become 100% static as well. And it's quite striking, because that obviously isn't quote unquote natural, but it works really well as a painting, because, that's what happens. And I think it also lends itself very much to the Impressionist style that we know of Van Gogh, because a lot of his work is all about movement and seeing those brush strokes to create those kind of flows of time and light. Yeah. And, when you think of like the Starry Night painting and stuff, there's all that movement in the sky of different colors and clouds and stars and everything, that in the static painting, there's a lot of movement as well. So bringing that to life kind of is almost like the next step in his work in a way. So I really, but you know, aside from little nitpicks and whatever, I do really think the animation is by far the biggest achievement of this movie, and definitely the reason to go see it and to check it out if anyone hasn't.
Yeah.
Because then, yeah, the story, I do like the fact that they tried to tell a story about his, well, first of all, it's telling you about Van Gogh and his life and kind of giving you all the facts, where it's, you know, our main character is kind of learning about his life from different other characters in Van Gogh's life and trying to kind of uncover the truth about this kind of reclusive artist and what he was actually like with other people and what other people thought of him. And, you know, for better or worse, they're not all positive either. Yeah. And he sounds like quite a difficult kind of character. So that was interesting, just as far as getting some information. But then I like that they touched on some mental health stuff, and because I'm always into people trying to explain and deal with various mental health issues and things in movies, especially when it's about a real character who, like a real person, I should say. He's not just a character, but but a real person who had to deal with these things and perhaps never got any, well, like a lot of artists of his era kind of thing, he never really got much recognition during his lifetime.
Yeah, true, yeah.
Because he was such an awkward and difficult kind of person because of his mental health issues and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
I always find that really interesting.
I'm also I'm generally a huge sucker for stories that explore a character without actually meeting the character, just through other characters talking about the character, that sort of thing. It's sort of a little bit of an environmental discovery as well, since the main character in this is just following the footsteps, so to say, of Van Gogh and through the environment learning about his personality. That's just like a subgenre kind of storytelling that I like anyway. And I've loved the added layer that this isn't just a fictional story in that sense, but we also learn about the actual person through his work brought to life. That's the special like vibe that this brings, that I couldn't tell another piece of media that really does it that way. And I think that's so powerful. Even I agree, this as a movie, this has some more or less blatant flaws that I would like to talk about later too. But even aside from that, it's just such a beautiful creation as a little captured memory of a real life person, so to say, even if it's not actually factual correct in every way, even if the depicted people and landscapes don't actually represent Van Gogh's real life surroundings necessarily, it's still such a beautiful creation in just keeping someone alive through his work, if that makes sense. I love this sort of this sort of sense. And to dog more on this movie and its flaws, though, I would be interested to if you felt the same way. I thought the black and white flashback sequences were generally the weakest moments. Like, not only did I think the acting in those was the worst, like there was a lot of wooden performances by the extras, in my opinion, and I also think the reduction to black and white, kind of made the rotoscoping animation less effective. I feel like that worked way better in color. I wonder if you had like a similar experience there.
Yes, as in, one thing I didn't like about when it went black and white for the flashbacks was that it stepped outside of the Impressionist style and went to just a more
realistic, right?
Almost like a more realistic kind of detailed charcoal drawing kind of style with smooth blending, and even sometimes you can't see the brush strokes and all this kind of stuff, which is nice, but it seemed out of place compared to the rest of the film, which had very much strong impressionist styling to it, even down to the fact that, yes, you can see the brushstrokes on the canvas. You can see where someone has touched this and where that color changes to that other color. There's no gradient. It's just different colors next to each other that when you step back, it kind of all makes sense. But when you look at it too closely, it just looks like a few brushstrokes, because that's kind of the whole point of Impressionism. Like it's meant to be taken as more of a whole as opposed to each little detail. And yeah, because the flashbacks kind of went out of that style, the only kind of, I think maybe this is what they were going for. I don't know, because I generally don't know, but I feel like perhaps they were going for more like a sketching kind of style where a lot of artists will sketch all the time in their books and that kind of thing. And there's a bit where in the movie where Van Gogh is like sketching some people around him and stuff. Maybe if it stuck to more of a sketchy kind of style, I think it would have been appropriate. But because it kind of loses the painting visuals in those moments, that's where I feel like it was kind of, just a bit weak compared to the rest of the movie.
Yeah, for sure. Though, yeah, you mentioned the brush strokes, the individual brush strokes, which like reminds me that during the credits, it shows all the or like a lot of the original paintings that were the basis for this movie, and also writes where those paintings reside nowadays. And I noticed that a couple of them apparently are owned by a museum in a neighboring city just here, and where I travel through every day on my way to work. So I made the decision, we talked about this a bit off mic already, so I made the decision to actually visit this museum and see some of those paintings in real life. The museum also owns the portrait painting of the main character in this movie, which I would have loved to see. That would have been amazing, though I asked around, and that one was apparently in the archive right now, not on display. But I did see a couple other paintings by Van Gogh, including, for example, the wheat field that shows up in the movie as well. And yeah, the individual paint brushes, the brush strokes, whatever, really going. I went close to that painting to really see those strokes, the paint, the layered oil painting.
Yeah.
And that has such a much different effect than seeing the thing as a whole. And it was also like seeing the actual painting and the actual brush strokes by this actual person after having seen this movie was honestly kind of amazing. I just love this. I think I just in general love when people like live on through their artistic creations.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's not only like his own paintings. It's just this movie walks, even if this movie isn't in the sense of just a movie like flawless at all or perfect or the best written one or whatever, it still really walks as a passionate and I feel authentic extension of that for this person, for Van Gogh. That's what makes it so beautiful to me.
Well, I think as well, like I'm coming at this movie as someone who has done a lot of art study in the past and art history as well. So I'm very familiar with Van Gogh anyway. And like watching the movie, I'm literally seeing almost every scene going, oh yeah, that's a painting. Yeah. Oh, that's a painting. There's another painting. Like you can see the paintings that the scenes are based on, happily. So I wonder how different it would be for someone who is not very familiar with his work. But I don't think it would matter, because the thing I like the most about it, and that's what I mean, the story in my book isn't the best. It's very kind of just factual, like, oh yeah, this is what people thought of Van Gogh and this is kind of what happened at the end of his life. And I kind of, there was some parts where they kind of were going into the suggestion that maybe he was murdered and there's a bit of a mystery there and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't care. But
it doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Well, that's not the important part to me. Like, I think his mental health issues and the fact that he self-harmed himself a lot and all that kind of thing, in reality, we know that anyway. Yeah. Because he did have a lot of mental health problems and he was an awkward guy who no one liked and was not very socially adept and all that kind of stuff. But aside from all that, Sorry, I keep stopping you from interjecting.
I had the thought there. Maybe the mystery aspect of did he really commit suicide or was he murdered? Maybe that was an intentional dig at how mental illness or depression in particular is often facilitated or like expanded, whatever, through like the environment that we live in. Maybe in that way, you could say he was killed by outside forces that drove him to suicide, I guess. I don't know if that's like intentional or whatever, but I could see that maybe that was the point. I don't know.
Yeah, I can see that as being a thing. But I think the more important thing, which is what I think the movie achieves best, is connecting you with his art and bringing that to life and kind of showing you why his art is worth a damn, really, because there's billions of artists out there who are all very talented, but why is this one such a classic, and why is this someone who people do study, and why are we so drawn to what he did as an artist? And I think bringing it to life in this way and kind of showing the animated versions of his paintings, especially considering that idea that I mentioned before about Impressionism often being about movement and being about broader details instead of just this is a nice picture. Like it is about a feeling and a mood and a movement as well in the picture. So seeing that faithfully brought to life, I think, is just beautiful and really goes a long way to connect you with his work. Because there are there's other theories as well that I've read in the past about Van Gogh and how his style of painting represents his schizophrenia that he might have had and all this kind of other stuff as well. And that's all cool, but it's all very subjective and we don't know because we just weren't there. So I prefer to just look at his work and kind of appreciate what he's done and why it's interesting and why it's, influenced so many other people since then. And so to that end, I thought the film itself just existing in this style does that on its own. Whether the story's good or not, whether that each beat is amazing or not, it doesn't really matter because that's all just kind of backdrop to showing, hey, look at this beautiful work that this dude made. And yeah, he had some issues and he, committed suicide and self-harmed and had trouble making friends and he was a bit of a loner and an awkward dude. But my God, look at how creative and wonderful his art was. And I think to that end, it succeeds completely in achieving what it's trying to do. So
I agree. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a real testament to the art we leave behind. In that sense, it is, yeah.
And as, someone who is a bit of an artist anyway, watching it, I was like, oh man, I really want to just go paint something now.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Which is awesome because that's, when I go to an art gallery and look at paintings or whatever, I want to get inspired, especially as an artist. I want it to make me want to go home and start making something. So, and this did that job as well, which I don't get very often from movies because I'm not trying to make movies. But
yeah.
It definitely made me think, oh yeah, I'd love to try out something in that style or something, just for the fun of it. I need to get my paints out and start mucking around with that kind of thing. And again, that in itself, I think, is awesome because what else is the point of learning about art than trying to inspire people to make art themselves,
Yeah, I love that.
So yeah, I think, although I do think at the end of the day, I would probably rate this not far off what you rated Thin Red Line, to be fair, because as much as I enjoyed the presentation of it and, the animation, and I do love rotoscoped films, I think it's such a awesome way to animate a film and, overlay it onto, film real people, but then just get creative and change everything you're looking at, but still have something grounded to kind of base it on. And especially when it's not done with just a computer where it's just been stuck through a filter kind of thing.
Yeah.
So have you seen the film Waking Life?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah, so that one does it really well because it does a lot of unrealistic animation on top of realistic filmed stuff as well. Like people's body parts will start drifting off their face and, or changing shape, or they'll become just one flat color instead of having details. And yeah, I love that kind of stuff. And like I've said a number of times now, like for the painter like Van Gogh, I think is it's a fantastic way to bring it all to life.
Yeah.
So I would give it a 7 or 8 out of 10. I'm kind of leaning towards an 8 because I just love the art that much. But I love the art that much, but really the story, I could take or leave it. It was more of a pure, the story to me was literally nothing more than a way to get from one painting to the next.
Yeah, if there wasn't the actual historical significance of the person, the story wouldn't really hold much weight, I think.
And I think I have to add my own subjective kind of perspective on that, being that I already know the story of Van Gogh.
Right.
This is, and it's literally just telling me some parts of the story just kind of a bit uninteresting, biography kind of stuff about the end of his life or the struggles he faced during his life. And as much as I appreciate them telling it, and especially dealing with the mental health aspects and that kind of thing, or, talking about it, raising it, it didn't really do anything for me. So I think for me, it's very much on the visuals and pretty much not a lot else.
So since you were clearly already more familiar with Van Gogh's life than I am, what do you think about the, the accuracy or whatever? What was your thoughts there?
Yeah, it seems fine. Like, I'm definitely not an expert, but I have had a short period of actually studying him, along with other people. But it seems like it's faithful, put it that way, and authentic.
Okay.
And I like how you mentioned that some of the scenes you're talking to characters who are people who he's painted in his life, and I think that was a really nice aspect as well, because like there's one particular painting, I forget what it's called, but there's a young woman sitting at a piano, just playing piano, and she comes up a bit in the story, and it's nice to kind of, there is some, well, I don't know, but I feel like there's some artistic license taken with some of these characters, and they might not be necessarily exactly who they're portrayed as in the film. Yeah. But I don't think that matters, because it does add more depth to why is he painting this person in front of him, and or like the boatman down by the river who he meets and talks to about who our current character, rather not Van Gogh, but who our current main character meets him and finds out his experience with Van Gogh and how he'd sit there painting and the boatman would sit there fishing, and they'd kind of have a quiet time together just in each other's company but not really interacting that much. And yeah, having that kind of context around paintings and visuals that we're used to seeing, I think is very much welcomed. Like, I like it. Yeah, whether it's 100% accurate or not, I don't know if it is, but I don't know if you ever could be, because a lot of that stuff is kind of interpreted or hearsay, or, I don't think there's a lot of hard facts written down about, this happened with this person. And
yeah, exactly, yeah.
So yeah, but I think I'm glad I watched it, because before you suggested it as well, this was on my watch list and I was keen to see it because of the animation style. So I'm very happy to have got around to seeing it eventually. And I would definitely recommend it to anyone if they have an interest in Impressionist painting or Van Gogh himself. And
hell yeah.
It's definitely a nice thing to watch.
I agree, yeah. I agree.
Left me feeling much better than watching The Thin Red Line did, which always leaves me feeling very depressed and with a sore face from crying my eyes out. But
which is interesting to me, because still Loving Vincent deals with depression, with an inherently heavy subject. But I agree, it's not that hard to get through or whatever, because it is Loving Vincent is about characters learning to have empathy with Van Gogh, and I think that's such a beautiful way to go about it as well. The main character, the main character especially, he's so dismissive about Van Gogh's weakness or whatever, and then eventually learns to empathize more.
I mean, he starts off quite reluctant even, doesn't he? And I guess I better deliver this letter because no one else will, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be an asshole and not do it, but the more he learns about the people he's meeting and stuff, and their impressions, and the more he kind of grows some compassion and empathy.
Yeah, and I think it's really soothing that way, without minimizing the realness of depression, I guess. But yeah, I think we got really good variety in our historic little cheddar here. I
In the infinite realm of what could be historical.
True, yeah. At least we didn't just go down the war path, which could have very well happened, honestly. But yeah.
Well, and I'm kind of with you in the fact that I don't like war films are not films I think of as in like, oh, goody, another war film.
Yeah.
Like most of the time, especially American war films, I'm just like, I don't care for them. Like, I'm sick of people telling me how great Saving Private Ryan is. And I'm like, nah, I don't actually like it very much at all because it's just a big yay America kind of film. And it's kind of corny, but that's a discussion for another time. But I do appreciate, because to me, I appreciate filmmakers like tackling difficult subjects and trying to teach others about, you know, exploring the limits of humanity and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, classic ones like Apocalypse Now and like Full Metal Jacket and those sorts of films where it's definitely not glorified. It's actually kind of horrific in its own way. And even in very confronting ways where you kind of go, wow, this is really fucked up. I think that is kind of a good function of storytelling, really, in general. Like, it doesn't have to be film, but using storytelling to explore what humanity is and what we're capable of, I think, is always a little bit interesting. So,
yeah, for sure. Yeah, exploring our collective past in general. Like, obviously, there's value in that. Just has to be.
Yeah, there's always the thing of learning from our mistakes and whatever. But
yeah,
I think it's kind of like I also obviously I'm into video games, as I know you are too, and there are things in video games which always kind of strike me differently because I think I'm not American when it's intended for American audiences.
Oh yeah,
where like just as a dumb example on a tangent, there's one version of Call of Duty I can't remember where America gets invaded by whoever the enemy is that day, and so there's this scene where you're in like middle America. There's like a burger joint. There's a mall. There's some car parks. It's very American suburbs. But you're a military guy who's in there fighting an enemy who's invading. And to me, it's just another Call of Duty level where I'm like, whatever, running around, big dumb shooty game. But all I heard about it was, oh my God, this is the most impactful thing ever. And
oh my fucking God,
how crazy is it that America's being invaded? And I'm just like, yeah, that bit's lost on me.
I actually think that's Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, maybe, because that's the only Call of Duty I ever tried. And I think that's exactly the sequence where I stopped playing because I couldn't stand it. Yeah, American.
Well, yeah.
But
we don't have to go into that. That's
okay.
I think we understand what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad that Thin Red Line doesn't do that.
For sure.
But yeah, I think I'm very glad to have seen Loving Vincent. And again, even with having slightly different views on even Thin Red Line or whatever, I think part of what always fascinates me about talking about these things with other people is that I can see where you're coming from and I don't disagree. I have a different opinion, but that's okay. But I can definitely see like your interpretation is, and not loving it as much as I do perhaps, is obviously just as valid. And that's kind of the point.
It's true. That's very much the point of this podcast. Yeah. All right. Do you have anything left to say, or should we move on to picking our next random theme?
Yeah, let's spin that wheel.
All right, let's see if we can get something more lighthearted next time. So for people that are listening to the first time or whatever, at the end of each episode, we are gonna put a bunch of little themes or genres on a wheel that we use to randomly choose the subject for the next episode. And we got general stuff on there, like whole genres like crime genre or like musicals or whatever, but we also got more specific themes like loss or like the writing specifically, or like cinematography, just so we have a focus to talk about for the structure, where we bring the two movies each episode. And I'm gonna spin this wheel right now to see what the next episode is gonna be about. And
Da-da-da-da-da.
we are gonna be talking about biographical movies. So
Ooh.
we're not really getting away from the historical stuff. Really, this is kind of like an almost natural extension of this discussion, I guess. Interesting.
That's kind of cool. There's a bit of flow there. So.
Yeah, it has something to it. Yeah.
Loving Vincent, take 2.
Yeah, I can choose it again. Done. Fuck. Okay.
But it has to be a film I haven't seen, and I've seen that now. So
true. Oh man.
I mean, I guess it doesn't have to be, but we haven't really called it a rule. But that's kind of the idea, anyway.
Yeah, we've been playing it so far this way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to have something fresh for at least one of us, if not
Makes
both of
sense.
us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
All right.
Interesting. Yeah, nothing jumps to mind immediately, but I'm sure there's some good stuff out there.
Yeah, the problem with that is like, do you choose are we gonna end up with like the obvious people in history that have like done the biographical stuff, or like will we find something more niche and interesting or whatever? I'm really not sure what I'm gonna pick.
No, definitely have to have a think about that.
Yeah.
And perhaps try not to make it too historical as well.
Yeah, let's see what we can
Just
find.
to change things up a little.
Another war drama or two.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna actually. I'm bringing a film about. I can't even think of anyone, but Winston Churchill during the war.
Yeah, and I'm gonna bring a very, very inventive and unique Adolf Hitler biography. Obviously, one of the many. Fuck that.
Yeah, I can do without.
Yeah,
any of that, really.
Me too.
I'm sure there's more interesting people we can talk about.
I'm sure, yeah. All right.
Awesome.
Well, as a final call to action to all the many listeners of our epic podcast, we always like to take like comments. If you have your own subjectively correct opinion on what we said, like please send them our way. Either through, I think Spotify has their own like message thing or whatever, or like YouTube comments, whatever. You figure it out. You find a way. And also, we are always taking more suggestions for subjects or themes that we can slap on our random little wheel. So if you have anything in mind that you maybe would like us to talk about, just send it our way, and we might include it in our little hat to pull from.
Yep.
But yeah.
I have already added romantic comedies to the list, as was requested by a listener, which I'll tell you about later. But so yeah.
Do we not want to give a shout out to this epic listener?
It's my sister.
No, that's fair. Hey, that's still fair. Deserves a shout out in my book.
So she thought it would be. She listened to the pilot and said, "You guys sound like you'd be interesting to talk about some romantic comedies."
Yeah.
So I added it to the list.
Shout out to Josh's sister for that one. Yeah.
So yes, thank you for that.
Yes.
We'll see if it comes up on the wheel.
Yep. All right.
But I actually like some romantic comedies. So
yeah, sure, for sure. Oh yeah, I can immediately think of some to pick from. Honestly. Yeah. All right.
Cool. Well, hopefully that day will come.
Yeah. But for now,
until then,
we'll be talking about old people.
Potentially deceased people.
Probably. All right. Thank you for listening, everybody.
Yes, thank you so much for listening.
And we hope you hear us again soon.
So long.
Bye-bye.